What's up, you data friends? It's Yanis here and welcome to my channel. If you've made it in this video, it means that you have an Excel test coming up and you're wondering from where to start. Therefore, in this video, we are going to go over the top 5 most commonly asked questions in your Excel interview test. And more specifically, it's not going to be 5 distinct questions. It's actually going to be 5 categories of questions where we're going to have a few examples of the questions that you might get in your test. I am going to upload this file in my GitHub page, so feel free to download this file and practice the questions as we go over them in this video. And before we start this video, let me just say that if you're passionate about data analytics and data science, then please consider liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and enable notifications for my future videos. Right, starting with our raw data we're going to work with. As you can see, we have some car dealership data where we have the make, the model of the car, the MSRP, which is basically the retail price of the car, the invoice price, the used and new price, body size, body style, horsepower, then the actual horsepower with RPM, torque, and then the highway fuel economy. As you can see, we have both text columns and we also have numbers columns, and we also have some columns that have both text and number, which is probably what you're gonna get in your Excel test. Right, starting with the first type of questions you are going to get is the aggregation questions. So there is no way you're going to have an Excel interview test and they are not going to ask you to aggregate the data. So what this means is that you have to be very comfortable in running these functions over here: the sum, the average, the count, the mean, and the max. So what we are going to do is that we are going to unhide and select the empty one so we can start working on it. So we want to write the formulas in the colored cells. So we're going to start with the sum and say equals sum and open brackets, and then we select the MSRP. So this is going to sum all this range I have just selected. Close brackets, click enter. There you go. This is the total MSRP for these selected cells. If I drag it now from here, click and drag, it's going to run the same formula on the next cells. As you can see, we have just summed the invoice price over here, and we have summed the used and new price over here. If I want to lock the cell so it doesn't move the range, what I can do is that I can select the formula, click on the range and click F4, and then F4 over here, and then click enter. And now if I try to move it, it's not going to move the range. As you can see, it kept the same number and the same range. It's a very useful thing to know when you are dragging the cells, just because if it's locked, it's not going to update the range. Now I'm going to go back and back because I still want to have the sum of the selected column. There we go, without the lock, and then we drag it again. There we go. So this is the sum. Now we are going to show the average. But before we show the average, I can show you another way to sum columns is by clicking equals sum, open brackets, and then by clicking Control down, I can select specific cells, as you can see over here. So I have selected just these cells that I want to sum, and then close brackets, and then click enter. And then I have the sum of the selected cells over here. Nice. So moving to average, we can click equals average, open brackets, and then select this. And we're going to do the same thing again. We are going to drag. There we go. So we have the average invoice price and the average used and new price. On the count, we are going to count the number of makes. So equals count, open brackets, and then select this range, close brackets, and we get a 0. This is because the count only works on numbers. So if I drag it now over the MSRP, you can see that it counted 14 numbers. So it's actually over here down on the count. Let me scroll in a bit so you can see it. There is the count 14 over there. scrolling back, what we need to do if we want to count text is that we need to say count A, which is count all basically, and then click enter. And now we get the same number. We have 14 rows. Moving on, we have the minimum and the maximum. So to get the min and the max, we can say equals min and then open brackets and then select all these numbers, close brackets, enter. So the minimum horsepower number is 211, which is these two Mercedeses over here. And if we drag it now, you're going to see that it does not work for a column that is basically numbers with text. So what we can do is that we can extract the horsepower number from this column over here. To do this, we are going to say equals left, open brackets, and then select this cell over here. So it's selected, left, comma, 3, because we want to select the first 3 characters. And then enter, and now we have a number down here. And then we can see that the minimum formula, it still doesn't work because this is still stored as text. To change this now, you need to say equals value, and this is going to turn our text number into a value. So if I double click over here, now we have a value, and now you can see that it selected the minimum torque number. We can do the same for the maximum. So equals max, open brackets, select, close brackets, and then we can drag, and this is going to give us the maximum horsepower and torque. Down here, we are going to quickly answer the questions. So these are the types of questions you might get when it comes to aggregations. You will definitely get an aggregation question, by the way. So starting with the total MSRP, we have already answered this. I'm going to copy and paste this function. Copy and paste this cell. And you can see I get a different number because the range has moved. So I'm just going to move the range up, click enter. Now we have the correct answer. What is the average invoice price for all cars? We already have the average invoice price. This is the number. So copy, paste. Make sure I have the correct range. There we go. This is correct. Next, we have how many car makes we have. So we can either copy this and paste it and then correct the range, which is the car makes. However, this is a tricky one because maybe the question is asking about the distinct car makes, which is a bit more complicated in Excel. So let's say it was asking about how many unique, car makes we have. Then the formula over here was going to be equals sum and then 1 divided by count if, and then we pass the range of the makes, comma, and then the values, and then we close, and then we close again. And this is telling us we have 7 distinct car makes. Now this is a bit more complex. I don't think you're gonna get this as a first question, but it's good to know how to count the distinct. Another option over here is to say equals and then count, and then you specifically select the makes by clicking down control. So you can see I'm just selecting one of each, close, and then this should say, count A is not a number, and then it says 7 again. So we can make this a number. However, I don't think you're going to get a complicated formula like this for the first question, which is probably going to be an aggregated type of question. Next, we have how many Audi cars we have. So again, we can say equals count A and then select only the Audi cars. So we have 2 Audi cars. What is the minimum horsepower for all cars? So this is the minimum, this is the horsepower number. So I can just copy this formula and then paste it over here. And then the minimum horsepower for all cars is 211. And then the maximum is the same. Is it for horsepower? Yeah, horsepower, which is this number, maximum, copy, and then paste over here. There we go. So this is a very good summary of the type of aggregated questions you might get in your Excel interview. Right, moving on, we have the VLOOKUPs, which is this tab over here. Now, there is no way you're going to have an Excel test and they are not going to test your knowledge on VLOOKUPs, which is basically bringing data together. So in this example, imagine that these columns did not exist and they are asking me questions to test my knowledge and see if I can join them. So we are going to unhide and select the empty ones so I can show you the example, which is this one, and this one over here. Now, this empty is our starting data set, and the question we have is to join the invoice price and find the most expensive car in terms of invoice price. So they're highlighting that they want to see the invoice price in this data set so we can find the most expensive car. Now, the invoice price is not in our current data set. It's actually on this data set over here that has ID and invoice price. So they're asking us this question to see if we know how to run a VLOOKUP. And in order now to join these two together, we need to find a common key. In this case, we have the first column that says key. So it's easy for us to join them based on this column, which is called ID and key. On other cases though, maybe the ID column is not going to be clear. So you yourself will need to find a unique column that exists on both data sets that you can join them together. However, in your beginner test, most probably is going to be straightforward on which column you should use to join. To run a VLOOKUP now, we want to go into the cell that we want to run the VLOOKUP. But first of all, let me copy and paste the column name, invoice price. And I'm also going to change the background into like this color, let's say, something light like this. Yeah, we want to say equals VLOOKUP, open brackets, select our key, which is this one over here, comma, then select our range that we want to look this key and find it. So you see it says 1, our range is going to be this over here. And basically it's going to search to find 1. And we are going to return the second column. So I'm going to say comma 2 because I want to return the second column. And then comma, I want to have an exact match. So 0 is the approximate and then 1 is the exact. So I'm just going to say 1, close bracket, click enter. And there you go. If we check the invoice price from the invoice price lookup, for key 1 is 92685. Which is 92685. Now, if I double click, it's going to repeat the process for everything else. And we can see we have a lot of zeros. There we go, 0, 0, 0, 16 is 205, 205 is correct. Now I want to make it look nicer. So I'm just going to do this, make these dollars, which is dollars like this, remove the decimals, and there we go. We have the invoice price. So now we want to find the most expensive car. So I can just say equals max to find the max price, close brackets, is the 205. So it's basically this car over here, Aston Martin DB11. So Aston Martin to answer the question, and then comma DB, what is it? DB11. There we go. Now, the second question is asking us to join the torque, which is on another page, this page over here, and then find the car with the least torque. To do this, we are going to repeat the same process. We are going to copy and paste the column name first, torque, copy, paste it over here, change the color into basically light purple because, well, actually, this is light purple and this is light blue. So we are more consistent with our coloring. And we want to say equals VLOOKUP, open brackets, 1, comma, which is our key, select the range. So this is our range. We want to return the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column, so 5, and then comma 1 for an approximate, for an exact match. And then we want to double click. So it's going to repeat everything, expand, and then make this look nicer. Now we want to find the car with the least torque. However, this is a text. So we need to create another column, which is going to be the torque NO, the actual number. We want to say equal left and then open bracket. Select this, comma 3. So we select the first 3 characters, double click. If we run min now, is not going to work because this is still a text. So what we need to do is that we need to say equals value, open bracket, close bracket. And now our aggregation is going to work. As you can see, it says 295. We find that car. 295 is this car over here. So the BMW 2 Series is actually BMW 2 Series is the answer to our question. So something to note here is that a lot of the times the question is not going to say join, it's going to say like this, find the price of the most expensive car. So yourself will have to look for the column in the dataset. If it doesn't exist, you will need to go over different tabs to find that column, in our case this one, and then you will need to run the VLOOKUP to bring this column over here in our current dataset, and then you will need to run the aggregation is asking. Right, moving on, we have the pivot tables, but quickly I'm just going to hide this because we don't need them anymore. Pivot tables. Now, again, there is no way you're going to have an Excel test and they're not going to test your knowledge in pivot tables. So a pivot table is basically taking all of your data set, in our case it's just this, and it's helping you reshape it and aggregate it in any way or form you want. And just to show a few examples, I'm going to unhide the empty so we can practice. This is the one over here. The first question we get is, what is the total MSRP per make? So we want to sum the MSRP by make. As you can see, we have a lot of duplications, so we have to aggregate the data per make. The quickest way to do this, instead of manually copying the distinct makes like this and then summing just Audi and then moving on for BM, Bentley, is to run a pivot table. So to do this, all you have to do is select your range and then click insert. Pivot table. From the table range I have selected, and I want to add it in an existing worksheet, and this is the location I want to add it. There we go. We can see we have all of our column names, and we get these 4 options over here: the filters, the columns, the rows, and the values. In our case, it's a very simple question. All we want to see is the total MSRP per make. So we are going to drag make into rows. There we go. We have the distinct makes now. And we want to drag MSRP into values. And now we want to change these to dollars, so it looks a bit nicer. Make it into 0 decimals. So now we have the total MSRP per make. And just to confirm this, we can just select the BMW MSRP. We can see the total value is 268.7 down here, which is 268.7, which is the same in the pivot table. Moving on, we have this question: what is the average invoice price per body size? To do this, we need to repeat the same process, create a pivot table. However, we can also copy and paste a pivot table. So if I copy this and then paste it down here, and now I change the rows from make to have the body size, which is this one over here, remove make. And then we want to see the average invoice price. So where is invoice price? Invoice price, drag it down here. You can see the sum of invoice price. So we want to change this to the average by clicking over here, value field settings, and then change this to average. Okay, now we have the average invoice price per body size. We also have the total MSRP. We can remove it like this. So now we have exactly what the question has asked. Now, the best way of learning pivot tables, by the way, is to experiment with these pivot tables you see over here. So you can literally drag and drop stuff so you can see how the pivot table changes, and then you're going to realize how it works. the pivot table. That's how I've learned it. I've played around with the different fields, and now I know how to very quickly get to where I want. Right, let's fix it again to how it was before, like this. Next question is, what is the total MSRP per make and body style? So I'm going to copy our pivot table again, paste it over here. We want to see the total MSRP for make, but also body style. So I can just drag body style in the columns, so we can see that the total MSRP for, let's say, Aston Martin and convertible is 233. The total MSRP for Aston Martin and SUV is 236. So with this way, you can see that we can reshape our data depending on what the question is asking us by using these pivot tables. We can also achieve this answer by switching rows with columns. So we can remove make and add body style down here. So now I have just switched the rows with the columns, but essentially is answering our question, the total MSRP per make and body style. Right, so as I said, the best way to learn pivot tables is by creating one and experimenting with how pivot tables work. Right, moving on, we have the visualizations, which again, there is no way you're going to have an Excel test and they're not going to ask you to create a visual. Now I'm going to unhide the empty so we can start working on our questions. Oh, sorry, not this one. I need the empty visualizations. There we go. So the first question we get is to visualize the total MSRP per model, which is the model and then the MSRP over here. When it comes to creating visualizations, I always use pivot tables just because maybe there is an aggregation. The pivot table is going to apply that aggregation, but if you create it manually, it's not going to apply the aggregation. You're going to have duplicate makes, for example, that show different invoice price, and you're not going to know which one is which. However, I'm going to show you both methods. The first one is just by selecting the two columns. In our case is this one, and then click Control and then MSRP, and then go over into Insert, Recommended Charts. Here you see a few recommendations about how you could possibly visualize these two columns. For my case, I'm going to select this one, click OK. I'm going to move it down here, make sure it takes all the space so everything is visible. You can see everything is visible. And to make it look a bit nicer, always try to make your answer look nicer. You will need to say MSRP per model, for example, in the title, per model. You can also add the data labels. So you can see the data labels over here. And some more advanced stuff is that you can make the data labels be vertically by clicking on the text options. I think it's over here, and then I want to make it like this. There we go. So now it looks nicer. We can also reduce the decimals so it looks nicer. There we go. We have no decimals. You can change the color, for example, like this into green. You can change this color if you want, like this. So again, the best way to learn how to do this, I think, is to experiment yourself in all the different options when it comes to visualizations. However, you will definitely get a visualization question. So make sure you know how to create visuals. The next question now is to visualize the total MSRP per make. And as you can see, we have duplicate makes, so we have to sum our data. And as I said in the previous set of questions in the pivot tables, the best way to aggregate your data is by creating pivot tables. So first, we are going to create a pivot table like we've shown before. And I want to insert it over here. And then we are going to answer the question we have with the pivot table. So we want to have make and then MSRP over here in the values. And then by clicking anywhere on the pivot table and clicking on insert recommended charts, we are going to get recommended charts based on our pivot table. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to right click and hide all fields because I don't want those. I'm going to change the title into total MSRP per make, like this. I'm going to delete this total because I don't need it. I'm also going to add the data labels because it's nice to see. Change this into, where is it, dollars, decimals, like this. And then, yeah, basically that's it. The difference now from the first and the second is that the first one is not aggregating the MSRP because the models are distinct, but the second one is actually summing Audi, for example, to be the total of these two, which is 188. And if we check Audi, 188. So my suggestion is that always create the pivot table first, and then you create the visual. The next question we have is to visualize the average invoice price per body size in a pie chart. So now they are specifically saying to us they want to have a pie chart. So we're going to copy the pivot table, paste it down here, make this a bit smaller or move it up so we have space. Now we are going to change the make, remove the make, and add the body size over here, and we want to have the average invoice price. So we're going to select invoice price over here, remove the sum, change this to the average. There we go. Now we have the average invoice price per body size. Another thing to notice is that every time I'm switching stuff in the pivot table, it changes the size of the pivot table. So what we can do is that we can select the pivot table options and unclick the auto fit column for both of our pivot tables, because it's annoying, they keep changing our sizes. Now we want to click on the pivot table, click on insert, and then this is the pie chart, but we can go via recommended again. This is our pie chart, select OK, move it down here, and now again we need to make it look nice. So I'm going to hide all field buttons. I'm going to change the title into average invoice price, copy paste, per, what is this, body size. So it's clear. Now I can actually make the chart bigger like this. No, maybe move it down here. What else? I can change the coloring if I want to, but yeah, I would say experiment yourself with the different options that you can make the visual look nicer. Moving on, we have the next question, which says plot the mean and max new use price per body size. So I'm going to copy this, paste it again. See how easy it is to reshape your data and answer questions with pivot tables. This is why I said you need to master pivot tables. So copy, paste, add the mean and the max new and use price. So use new price, this is the mean. And then we also want the max. So I can drag the same field again and change this to max. Like this, click OK. So min max, yeah, that's correct. Move this a bit over here on the side. Now I can click over here, click on insert, and then recommend the charts. This one looks nice. Let's check this one, for example. Yeah, this is also nice. This is also nice. Yeah, so it's up to you which visual to use, as they don't specify, but make sure the one you are going to select that it looks very nice. So our legend, I'm going to add in the bottom like this. Look at it. I can add a title again. I can add the data labels. So there is a lot of things we can do to make the visuals look nicer, but I want to keep the video short. So I would suggest you going through all the different options on the right-hand side. When I click the format axis, all these options, I suggest you go through them and learn how to make the visuals look nice. Again, it depends from the time you have, by the way, to complete the test. If you don't have much time, then make it look nice with the bare minimum, like I do in this video. Right, and the last categories of questions we have is the conditional formatting, which is very important, and they are definitely going to test you on this. So what they are trying to understand here is your ability to take some boring raw data that looks like this and make it look nicer, more presentable, make the key insights stand out so the business can very quickly understand and digest the data you provide to them. Right, so now I'm going to unhide this and I'm going to select the empty. So we start working on this raw data we have. The first question we get, it says, make the data look more presentable. And they're not giving us any insights into what to do. So over here, you have to demonstrate your skills that you know how to conditionally format this data to look nice. So first of all, what I always do is to add the totals. So I'm just going to say totals slash averages. And then I'm going to say equals sum. So over here, now I'm demonstrating my skills. So the business knows that I can actually create formulas and make the data set look nicer. So the horsepower, I'm still going to do the sum for the horsepower, and that's it. I'm going to select the whole data set now. Click over here, select different line styles. So you can see the dotted lines. Select the whole thing, add the borders. I'm going to make the titles wider like this, make them bold, put them in the middle, and also in the middle like this. I want to wrap the text so it fits like this. Maybe we can change the color into, let's say, dark blue. We can add a background color, maybe light blue. On the totals and averages, again, we want to make them bold. We want to give them some more size like this and like this. Next, we want to make the MSRP, which we know is a dollar value. So if you don't know what kind of value it is, then based on the location you are and the currency you use, most probably it's going to be that. So make sure you select that. Remove the decimals. I'm going to format paint and do the same for invoice price. Format paint, do the same for the used and new price. And then for the horsepower, I'm going to add the commas because this is not dollars. There we go. It's already looking a lot nicer. Also, I want to make sure that all the columns are visible. And to do this, we can select them. You can see this is not visible. And then double click anywhere. So this adjusted the weight of the column. So all of our data is visible. And the last thing I want to do here is that I want to select and add the filter because it's always easy for the business. If they want to search a specific model, they can search the model like this over here. The next thing we get is that actually let's test. Did we do everything that we said? So we changed the coloring, we added the totals, we added dollars, added filter. Yeah, this is some very basic things you can do to make your table look much nicer. The next question we have is to make the used new cars to stand out. And to do this, I'm just going to select this column and I'm going to go into conditional format. And over here, there is a few things we can do. As you can see, you can hover over them and see what it does. But for our case, I'm just going to do this because I like these data bars a lot. This helps the business straight away see the most expensive car and also the least expensive cars. So we've done this too. Flush out any duplicated car models. Again, this is a conditional formatting step that you definitely need to know how to do. To do this is very easy. We can select, what is it for the car models it said. So I'm just going to select the models and then click on conditionally format and then highlight cells, duplicate values. There you go. Straight away, it highlighted all the cells that have duplicated values. We can actually change the color over here, but I'm going to leave it as red. Next, it says if the horsepower number is more than 400, then highlight it as green, if not, as red. So the horsepower no, which is this one, I need to select it. Click conditionally format, highlight cells rules. If it's greater than, let's say, 400, is it 400? Yeah, 400. We want to have green like this. And add another rule. If it's less than 400, we want to have light red, which is already selected. There we go. So we've now conditionally formatted the data based on the question we got. Next, it says create another column that has the MSRP per horsepower. Make this column stand out. So new column, MSRP per horsepower. What did I do? Horse power. Yep, click enter. You can see straight away it kept the same formatting. However, we still need to add the filter. Oh, it removed all the filters. So let's add it again. Filters, filter. Yep. and the column is equals, it says MSRP per horsepower. So I'm just going to divide the MSRP with the horsepower and then click enter. Over here in the totals, I want to have the average. I want to select everything, remove the decimals because we don't need them, make it a number like this, add this in the middle so it looks nicer. Yep, that's fine. And we want to make this column stand out based on the question. So I'm just going to select it. So I'm going to assume that the higher the MSRP, which is the retail price per horsepower, is actually a better deal. So I'm going to do a color scale and I'm going to select the highs are going to be the greens and the lows are going to be the red. So this is how it looks, MSRP per horsepower. So I think that's it. If you want to get all the answers written, it's actually on this tab like this. But we have basically taken a very boring raw data that was like this and we've made it look much nicer. So now we can snip this, add it in an email and distribute it to the team that basically has a summary of our dataset. Right, so this is it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've got enough value out of this video. If you feel like you did, I would really appreciate it if you click the like button, subscribe to my channel and enable notifications for my future videos. Additionally, I'm going to upload 3 more Excel tests so you can actually test your knowledge within a time limit and see how well you do. I think the best way to pass your test is basically practice by doing other tests. So I highly suggest you go over and look into those videos. I'm going to have the links in the video description. So thank you very much for watching this video and I'm going to see you in the next video.